Sarah Phillips by Andrea Lee seemed quite apparently different to me compared to the other texts on the module. I think the most obvious being it is the first female authored collection we have looked at over the module, but moreover I think the thing that made this differ for me the most was how it illuminates that dialogues of race in African American stories are not one-dimensional, but in fact intersectionality is prevalent, and thus racial identity is more complex. I remember my first few journal entries, I queried this sense of shared and communal experiences, or like a collective memory in collections like Uncle Tom's Children, which included these quite varying accounts, all of which shared the same kind of necessity for adapting in order to survive the hostile treatment under the Jim Crow regime. Yet when I read Sarah Phillips, I didn't feel as though I was witnessing the same sense of unity, because as much as race is a mode of segregation, class can lead to a whole other form of separation. Where we have previously witnessed quite heavily the interracial difficulties, the implications of intraracial disputes seems just as notable in Sarah Phillips. Once I read the collection through, I immediately had the question on my mind: why does Lee begin the collection with the protagonist at her oldest in Paris and then proceed to delve into the past experiences of a younger Sarah? And then, following the first story, the stories of Sarah's adolescence and childhood seem to me to have a beginning and end. The story New African starts it, and then her stories of life in America, and then quite fittingly titled A Funeral at New African ends it. I feel the theme of childhood and growth has been so prevalent in the texts we've looked at previously, from Big Boy Leaves Home and Recitative, and so I thought to look further into this idea of the coming of age. In her essay Coming of Age in the African American Novel, Claudine Reynolds questions: does the narrative depict the emergence of a stronger individual, better integrated, better self-integrated, both or neither? Seeing as Sarah is essentially grown up in the first story, I would assume that, if following the pattern, she would be better integrated and a stronger individual. However, I don't feel that is the case. I think, as the first story is both temporally and spatially removed, with her being in France and England rather than America, is almost as if there is no resolved character. Her inability to perceive the obvious racism, sexism and harsher realities is bizarre. We are told at the beginning her friend Kate is being held prisoner in her apartment, yet Sarah addresses this matter with nonchalance, and at the end she questions, maybe her guardians would let me in. How she fails to identify or sympathise with this possible domestic abuse, and also how Sarah says she often teased Henry into telling her nigger jokes, which just seems so strange to me, as it seems that she wanted to experience these possible hardships, yet fails to realise when she is actually experiencing them. I do feel, however, her childhood does offer this sense of learning. One of the stories that intrigued me was The Days of the Thunderbirds. I thoroughly enjoyed this story, as I think for me what it highlighted was people often attempt to tackle matters like race and class with a very schematised approach, and without the intention of a pun, there is often a sense that race is seen as very black and white. We are told that Greyfeather Camp is essentially an integration camp, forming a motley collection of colours and religions, and that the children come from middle-class backgrounds with fathers who are professors and clergymen. I thought, how does this camp, whose motto is Adventures in Understanding, really promote integration when it is set up in such an exclusive and regulated way? I think a part of the text that stood out for me was when Sarah imparts her knowledge of black gangs with Shen Shu, yet she reveals her knowledge comes from watching the movie The West Side Story. This movie is Sarah's only previous understanding of Another Class, and seeing as it is based upon a Broadway play, something which I'm sure real gang members wouldn't have been involved with, brings up the question of authenticity and how we learn and experience. I think when the Thunderbirds arrive, there is a new dynamic. The counsellor tries to initiate a conversation which is directed by the question of friendship. Yet Marvin Jones responds that he does not have friends, he has men and his ladies. Thunderbirds then chant the song, to which makes the counselor uncomfortable, almost angry. I think this is such a prevalent moment, as what Marvin is doing is breaking this methodical way of gaining an understanding of one another. This expression of song breaks the restricted dialogue, which is almost forcing a response, and instead lets the others gain an insight into their lives without being assisted.